Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Reading Between the Lines. I am your host, the Water Dog, and today we're going to be talking Ravnos. But before we do that, would you do me the kind favor of hitting that subscribe button? It means a whole lot to me, and I really appreciate it. I want to apologize to all of my subscribers real quick, simply because I haven't had a video out in a while. I've been a pretty busy guy. I've had a lot of different things going on here lately. Not a whole lot I really want to get into, but we've had some personal tragedy in my family. I'm a school teacher. School ended, and then I had the Gulf Coast roast, and then here in about a week we've got the Week of Nightmares Origins coming up. So I've been relatively busy, so I haven't had a chance to really do anything. My original plan at the beginning of the year was to do 3 videos, one over each of the new decks, one over the Ravnos, the Salubri, and the Shemisi, and I actually had them filmed, and I accidentally deleted them. I deleted the filming of it, but I've still got all the artwork and everything else for them. And then today I had a buddy of mine. He says he really wants to do Ravnos, and I said, well, okay, I guess I can finally do that Ravnos video. It's been asked for a couple of times, so I'll do a Ravnos video. So that's what we're going to do today. So we're going to talk some Ravnos for you, okay? Keep in mind that these, I have not really played these 3 decks since February. I haven't played any of the new decks really since February. I built them originally back then, and we're just going to kind of look at that build and kind of look at my ideas. But first, let's look at what you're going to get inside the box, because you do get that 77 card deck and 12 card crypt. So let's look at that box of cards that you're going to get in a Ravnos deck. So you're going to get your 12 crypt. You're going to get one Doc Martina, one Gothi, one Heinrich, one Jean-Francois, one Luciano, one Oleg, one Fabun, one Roy, 2 Sri Lankas, 1 Trung, and 1 Zephyr. The big vampires to me, the really good ones are going to be Doc, Gothi, Fabun, and Heinrich. You could throw in Luciano too. Those are the big ones. Sri Lanka to me is a good vampire. Just costs too much. Even though you're going to get the +1 bleed and you're going to get the extra discard, for what this deck is going to ultimately do, that vampire costs too much for me. But we'll break that down a little bit. So let's look at the library. It's a 77 card library, and you're going to get your masters. Your first master is good. It's a much needed reprint, which is the Archon Investigation. You're going to get 3 Blood Dolls, 1 Club Illusion, 1 Fortune Teller Shop, 1 Garibaldi Museum, Park Hunting Ground, Power Base Los Angeles, and 1 Week of Nightmares, which is going to be a key card in this deck. So really good master cards, a good master card spray. I really like getting the Archon Investigation, so it's nice to get some extra copies of that, considering, and I've been playing for 30 years, I only had 3 copies of that card, so this has been a nice reprint for me, really nice reprint. And then of course having the Museum, Club Illusion, and the Power Base Los Angeles, all really good cards for this deck. When you look at the actions, this is the key card of the deck. Break the Bonds. You're going to get 8. You're going to get 1 Entrancement. We're going to really get into depth on Break the Bonds here in a little bit, so we're going to save all that information for you, but that's your key card in the deck. That's the #1 thing that you're going to be doing. Equipment. You get a Shimulu Tarot, and you get a Treasured Semeji. Treasured Semeji is going to find its way in most of these Ravnos decks when people start building them. That's going to be one of the cards that you'll see in the deck. Allies and Retainers, you get a City Star Taxi, and you get a Feral Hound. Man, I like Feral Hound. I wish it just wasn't in Ravnos exclusive. Boy, man, I wish my Gangrel deck could have that. Oh man, I wish my Gangrel deck could have that. That's just such a good card. But it is for Ravnos, so maybe at some point, it'll be conducive to play Ravnos and using that card and using the ability to actually have a blocking Ravnos deck. But right now, to me, it's not practical, because Break the Bonds changes all of that. Modifiers, you get your typical Obfuscate. You get 4 Cloak the Gatherings, 4 Lost in Crowds, 4 Swallowed by the Night, 3 Veil of Legions, and then the new card, 4 Visions of Gehenna, and that's going to be a big card in this deck as well, because of the presence, the superior presence ability of being able to get that +2 bleed. That's going to be a key effect for this deck. Combat cards, for Majesty, 2 Pack Alphas, and I love the reprint of Pack Alpha. I love the art. It's one of my favorite arts that they've done in a while. So I really, really like the Pack Alpha art. And then another new card, 2 Voracious Vermin, which gives you the strike dodge, and then at the superior gives you the additional range strike to burn a weapon. So it's just another way of kind of playing off that canine horde idea. But the only difference is you get that strike dodge, and so that's not a bad way of doing that. So it's not a bad card. It's a good card. Last but not least, reactions. 4 Cat's Guidance, 4 Guard Dogs, a new card, 4 Night Terrors, 4 On the QV, 4 Protection Rackets, and another new card, 4 Visions of Zapasura. The Night Visions, good card as far as it's a way of having intercept without having intercept by reducing the stealth down to 0. And then another great bleed reduction card. The nice thing about Visions as compared to Night Terrors is Ravnos exclusive, but Visions is not. Visions can go into any deck that has that off-escape presence, and so if you're wanting to basically bleed reduce, it's a good bleed reduction card. So let's talk about my thoughts about my ideas when I first kind of opened up the box and kind of went through things. Of course, the first thing I'm looking at is discipline spread. What is the disciplines that the Ravnos are going to be using? They've got my favorite. I love the paw, so they got animalism, you've got off-escape, you got presence, and those 3 disciplines are going to be what I'm looking at when I'm creating. The other thing is that Ravnos is an anarch. The other thing you have to realize is that these anarchs have no titles. So none of the Ravnos are coming in with titles. So really they're going to be an action-based, or if you want to play it, reaction-based clan more than anything else. But because of the card Break the Bonds, it's going to be action-based. So let's talk about Break the Bonds real quick, because that is the card. Break the Bonds is an anarch card. It's got all 3 of those Ravnos disciplines, and you can use all 3 of those Ravnos disciplines when you do a directed bleed. And so the animalism gives you the +1 bleed. The obfuscate allows you, if the action is successful, to lock a minion. And then you've got the presence. If the action is successful, you can then add a blood from the blood bank to a vampire in your uncontrolled region. So you got 3 things that you can do with this card. And I thought Platinum Protocol was powerful, but I do think that this is an even better card. It's just really, really, really good. And what's going to make this card good is a card that's not in your Ravnos deck. It's going to be a card that you're going to have to add to it, and that's Memory Rift. When you add Memory Rift to this action, you change the scope of what you're doing. Memory Rift is going to allow you to use the obfuscate, and it's going to allow you to use the presence. And what's good about that is the obfuscate is going to give you the +1 stealth, and the presence is going to allow you to strike combat ends. So essentially, when you take an action with your Ravnos, you got 5 things on 2 cards that is, basically what the game is all about. Okay? So just think about it. These are the 5 things you're going to be able to do with these 2 cards when you take that bleed action. Number 1, you're going to get the bleed at a plus bleed. Okay? You're going to be able to do it at a stealth. Alrighty? You're going to be able to lock down a minion. You're going to be able to add a blood from the blood bank to a vampire in your uncontrolled region. And if you get into trouble, you can strike combat ends. Those 2 cards make the deck tick. That's the engine right there. And then for other things, what you're going to do after that is you're going to add stealth as you need it, and then you're going to add plus bleed as you need it. And typically speaking, with a deck like this, for example, if I'm playing Malkavian, typically speaking, I want to get out my higher cap Malkavian out, and then I want to govern down, and I want to work my way down. So I start from the top end to go to the low end to get my vampires out to do all the bleeding action and stuff that I'm going to do. So it takes a few turns to get that up in motion. That is not the case for this deck. You're going to start from the low end and work your way to the top end. You're going to start with your lowest cap vampire, and he's going to basically do his own mini govern for you. Okay? And so you work from the low end, and so you're basically bleeding turn 2. In most cases, you're going to be bleeding turn 2, and you're going to be able to have that mini govern as well. And so that machine just starts to take off and go, okay? And so you work your way up the chain, okay? The other thing about the deck is when I'm looking at the Ravnos, is I'm looking at, to me, those are the two major disciplines that this deck really funnels off of, which is obfuscate and presence. And so I started thinking, well, what other anarchs have those disciplines that you can utilize? And then if you do a quick search, you're going to see there's a bunch of ministry vampires that all have obfuscate and all have presence. And so if you wanted to use break the bonds in a ministry deck, you could do it. And if you wanted to combine some of the ministry into your Ravnos, you could do it, because they have those disciplines, okay? They have the obfuscate, they have the presence, and you can go with it from there. The other thing is if you just wanted to make sure they all had all three disciplines, and we're talking about animalism, obfuscate, and presence, well, you've got that too. There are three anarch vampires, Boleslaw, Jacques Rouge, and Hesha. All three have all three of those disciplines of animalism, presence, and obfuscate. And so those are three vampires that can work completely in conjunction with your Ravnos. And in fact, that's really the direction that I'm heading when I built my deck. I simply said, I want the smallest cap vampires that can do the most damage as fast as I can possibly get them out. And the other thing, whenever I'm doing something like this, if I'm doing like a small, like if I'm doing vampires that don't have a lot of capacity, and I'm having vampires that are taking just a specific action, if they're just taking one action, I just want one copy of that vampire in my crypt. I don't ever want to play two copies if I can help it. I just want one copy of the vampire in my deck. And because of these three vampires, you can do that. And not only that, you can just simply trigger around, to get started with your very low cap vampires, you can go obfuscate presence. And so let's look at my build back in February for this. This actually worked really, really. We built this it was either January or February, and I started playing this deck. But anyway, let's have a look at this. I call the deck Anarch Schism, but it's just playing off the word break. Schism is a break. It's a break, so it's kind of what that is. And so I was just trying to get the smallest cap vampires as I could possibly get. I just wanted the small, and I wanted them to all be different, And so when you look at the crypt, our highest cap vampire is going to be a 6 cap. And we're going to run one Boleslaw. We have a Doc Martina, one Jacques Rouge, one Luciano, one Roberto. And so those are my big cap vampires. It is half the crypt at the 6, but the beautiful thing is the bottom half. So we go down to a 5 cap with Gothi, one Fabian, and then at the 4 cap you go Jean-Francois. Now, then you've got the vampires that just have presence obfuscate, and that's Marcel, Zafira, Coach, and Oleg. And so you'll notice I'm not running a straight Ravnos crypt with this. And that is because Break the Bonds is not clan specific, okay? And it's also not age specific, because if you look at Break the Bonds and you actually, read the card out, okay? Especially when you're talking about that presence ability, if the bleed is successful, add 1 blood to a vampire in your uncontrolled region. So it doesn't care about age, not like Govern the Unaligned, which cares about age. This doesn't care about age. And so what's great about this is you are going to work from the small end up. You work from the small end up with this deck, and that's kind of how you play it off, okay? I built a 70-card deck, and whenever I'm doing a fast deck, I don't want a lot of cards. I want the fewest amount of cards that I feel like I need in the deck, and 70 cards feels about right for this deck. You get the Club Illusion for the extra +1 bleed. You got a Coven to kind of refill your vampires. Dabblers, once again, to refill your vampires. The nice thing about Dabbler and Coven, they're trifles. Effective management. I am a fan of effective management. I probably put more effective managements in my decks than anybody else I've ever seen play, because I've got some in just about, I would say, at least a third of my decks, and especially if I'm playing with smaller vampires. I play with a lot of effective management. And the reason is I don't want to have to pay for something, and I want the process to be fast. I want it to be as fast as possible. I don't want to waste 4 transfers in a pool to get a vampire out of my crypt area, put it in my uncontrolled region. So I want something that's fast. So I like effective management. 4 is about right for this deck. And so, because if you can get yourself 2 to where you've really got about 6 Ravnos in play, you should be fine. You should be able to win with 4, but 6 minions doing all of this stuff is going to be great. Then you go Information Highway. Once again, that's to help speed up your transfers. 4 Valen. Valen is your defense. That's your defense, because you're not going to be blocking. You're going to be going forward. This is a forward motion deck, and so Valen is your defense. So that's one of the nice things about having the 6 caps is you Valen them for 5, and you've got 1 blood on them, and guess what you're doing? Bleeding. You just bleeding with that 1 blood. If you've got Dabbler, the nice thing is it fills it back up, which allows you then to play some of the stealth cards and play some of the plus bleed cards, and so you go with it from there. So Valen is your defense. It's really what it was. Week of Nightmares. I recently just recently put this in. One of my players, Sid Kelly, you got to put a Week of Nightmares in the deck. It's just too good. So he talked me into it. I originally just didn't have it in this deck, but he's right. Now, if I was playing a straight Ravnos Crypt, because I think most players, if you go online, I think most players are going to play a straight Ravnos Crypt. I'm not, okay? But if you're going to play a straight Ravnos Crypt, then yeah, I would say probably put 2 Week of Nightmares in your deck. I do think it's a really, really good card. I just didn't put it in mine originally. Like I said, I just took it out of the box, put this deck kind of quickly together, and really liked the way that it ran. In fact, this deck won every game I played with it except for one, and that's because I was between 2 combat decks. I had one on my right, one on my left. They just went and crushed it. That's the only time this deck ever lost for me. It's the only time. Only time. Then, of course, I'm going to put 18 Break the Bonds. That is the key card, so you want to have enough of them to make sure that you're doing a Break the Bonds every turn. Now, this is where I'm probably going to be different than most players because I think differently than most players. And so when I always like to try to have as low a cost of things as I can possibly get it, okay? I don't feel like I have to just simply, do the ultimate bleed every turn. What I want is I just want efficiency, and I want to keep my vampires on the table as much as possible, because if I do get into a position where they're starting to get beat up, then I want to be able to have some blood on them. Adhocracy gives you +1 bleed. That's why I've got 3, okay? In your crypt, or in this crypt, there are 8 vampires with animalism. And so, therefore, Adhocracy, 3 of them, I think is a good number. Cloak the Gathering, 1. Domain of Evernight. Domain of Evernight, I think, is a forgotten card when it comes to stealth. And when I'm running Obfuscate cards, I like Obfuscate cards that are of a variety. So that if I'm drawn, I don't want to be drawn into the same Obfuscate card. I want a different Obfuscate card. And I think sometimes people tend to forget the Domain Evernight. I'm saying overnight. Domain of Evernight has a +1 stealth for Obfuscate. And so you can use that +1 stealth. Once again, 2 block fails with Elder Impersonation. You got a Faceless Knight, 2 Lost Crowds, and then here's that big card, the Memory Rift. I've got 8 in this deck. Memory Rift with Break the Bonds is just really, really, really good. Just really good. Okay. 2 Monkey Wrench. This is my, if I've got to blow something up, then I'm going to blow it up, and I'm going to, if I want to get that 5-6 bleed in and need it, then there it is. Power of One. Power of One, really good Anarch card. So you can get the +1 bleed, but you can also get the +1 bleed and an extra stealth out of it. Does cost you 1, but you do have that 1 spy mission, 2 True Love Faces. Once again, all of my vampires have Obfuscate Presence, and so they're all going to be able to play this card, so that gives you a +1 bleed with that. Okay? And so you get that extra bonus there. And then, of course, the Superior, you can have somebody pay a pull if they want to continue. Veil of Legions, my last major Obfuscate card in the modifiers. Then, of course, 4 Visions of Gehenna. At Superior, that's really where you're trying to play this. When I look at, this is the downside of the Ravnos, and this is why a lot of people, when they play the Ravnos, they're playing 2 copies of some of these vampires, which is why I'm only playing one, but they're playing 2 copies because you've only got really 5 vampires that have the superior presence. One of them is Sri Lanka, and I'm not playing Sri Lanka. So in my library, there are 4. And so I'm not relying on this card solely. I do believe that I'm going to have, because the way that I'm going to have one of them that's going to be able to play that card. And so that's all I need. So I want to be able to get the plus bleeds off of everybody. So that's why there's a variety of plus bleeds off of this deck. 2 Swallowed by the Night. Once again, you've got the stealth in it. If you do get into a combat, you've got, I think it's 5 vampires that have the superior obfuscate. There you go. And then once again, here's another great stealth card that I think people tend to forget about, which is the Gift of Sleep, because with that inferior obfuscate, you can get that +1 stealth, and so it's just another variety. Once again, variety, so that if I'm drawing for stealth, I want to draw different. I don't want to draw the same card. I want to draw different, and so that's why I do that. And then to me, a really important card in the deck, which is the Bitter and the Sweet Story, because you should be able to take out your prey. And then if you've got a Bitter and the Sweet Story into play, you're increasing your hand size, which means you're increasing your efficiency. And it's a card that doesn't cost you anything. It's a card when you play it, it's replaced. So that's another good thing about it. So the Bitter and the Sweet Story for this deck works really, really good. So that's the 70 card deck. That's the general idea for me. I've seen this deck in action. I've seen other builds in action. Brutal. I mean, we got one of our players that plays it brutal. It's just he crushes us very, very fast. In fact, he got to the final table with it in Lafayette, in the Lafayette Coast Roast. He got to the final table with it, Sid did. And then, if you were paying attention, you'll notice that Darby Keeney won 3 tournaments in Dallas, and the first one he did was a Ravnos deck, a Ravnos bleed deck. And because we were talking about that, because he asked me, he goes, are you playing it? And I said, no, I'm not. I said, that's just broken. I'm not going to play it. And he played it. He tore everybody up. I think it was he got all but one VP in his 3 rounds. In his 2, the 2 qualifying rounds, and in the final he got all but 1 VP. He just swept through those tables really, really fast. It's a strong deck. Break the Bonds is the best card in the game right now. By far and away, it's the best card in the game, especially with the efficiency. Add Memory Rift to it. You've now got 5 things that you're doing on an action, and that's just insane. It's insane. Vulnerabilities to the deck is it could find itself in trouble with some political decks, especially some political decks that are not its direct prey, and combat decks. Combat decks will tear it up because you've really got no defense if you're playing this model. You could play a model where you could play Majesty, so you have some sort of defense. You could play a model where you've got bleed reduction, okay? So you have some sort of defense. But my thing is just go forward. This deck is designed to go forward, and you just go forward with it, and that's the way. Gang, that's all I've got time for, man. I really appreciate you watching, man, and I hope to hear from you soon. Please leave some comments down there for me, and we can chit-chat about a Ravnos. Y'all take care. Oh, you watched the whole video? Hey, thanks for watching, man. I appreciate it. If you like what you've been seeing, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Y'all take care.